Good evening, everybody. Voodoo 51292 here, and tonight I'm recording my second ever question and answer video, and this video series is now going to go under the name Voodoo's Mailbag. This was a name suggested to me by JP the Warrior, and that's what we're going to be going with. You know, no real creative puns or anything for the title of this series. But, there doesn't necessarily have to be. I think the name gets the point across. It makes it pretty simple what this series is. Everybody kind of knows that, a mailbag series is a Q&A. And so I think it's a good enough name and we're going to go with it. So thanks to JP the Warrior for the suggestion. And we have several more questions we are going to be answering tonight. We have several questions, but they only come from 3 people. 3 people asked multiple questions on my video, and these 3 people are probably the 3 most outspoken, active participants in my channel, I would have to say. And, which is perfectly fine. Whatever, however many questions you want to ask them. I love getting as many questions as I can, so, I appreciate all the questions and the participation in this, because without you guys, I wouldn't be doing this series. So I guess these guys are the ones that had questions this time around, which is fine. Another note, I have not looked at these questions in a very long time. I've had these questions piled up for a while, but I'm just now getting around to doing the video. So I'm going to be kind of answering these questions cold turkey. I like to kind of do that. I think it's better than me, reading them beforehand and formulating an answer in my head before I sit down to record. I just think it's better that I answer them kind of cold turkey, so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to go through and answer the questions, all the questions from each person individually. So we're going to go ahead and start answering questions asked by Tom Harding. And he asked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and just go in order. So his first question: I'm going to university in September. Do you have any advice for a first-year student? Well, obviously, college or university, I assume you're probably not U.S. calling it university. You might be from England. I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure they call it university over there, right? So it's obviously very different from high school, or I guess they call it, what, secondary school or something like that. I apologize, I'm completely culturally ignorant. It's obviously going to be very different, and so, I would imagine that the similarities between college here and university there are pretty similar. I've said this a bunch, but the biggest difference for me was going from a schedule in which I knew I had the same start and end time every day of school. In high school, I knew what classes I was going to when, get up the same time every morning, go to school for, 7 hours, same classes, come home, have exactly this much time every night to do work, and then sleep. And it was very regulated, very formulaic, and obviously I was living at home this whole time with my parents. And when you go to college/university, all of a sudden you find out that your time is much more unstructured. And you've got to figure out on your own how to deal with that. You have to structure yourself. You have to be self-disciplined. Because you're going to have a lot more time home, not in the classroom than you did in high school. So for me, that was the biggest adjustment. Now, I'm a humongous procrastinator, so this was a tough adjustment for me. It still is. I still procrastinate like the dickens. Let me put it to you this way. I had a lab report that was due tonight at 6 p.m. Huge lab report. Took me hours to write. I turned it in at 5:58. It was due at 6. Okay, so that's just me. And actually, that's how I work the best. I work best during crunch time. I study best during crunch time. A lot of people I know, they will work on assignments weeks ahead of time. They will study days, weeks in advance. I can't do that because for me, I don't work effectively, and my heart and my head's not in what I'm doing unless I'm up against the deadline, and then I focus and concentrate. So for you, the most important thing: structure your time wisely and learn what works for you. Learn if you're somebody who has to study or work in advance, or if you work better under that crunch time pressure, and plan your time accordingly. You know, you have to make time for whatever it is you need to do to be successful. And obviously, the big thing, you know, college is a huge amount of balancing work with fun. Obviously, college and university is an opportunity for you to have some of the most fun you've ever had in your life. And certainly, it's been that way with me. But I have always found a way to balance the two, and it's worked for me effectively. And so for you, that's the biggest thing, especially if you're not going to be living at home, you don't have that parental regulation. That's very important. So that would be my advice to you in the first year, because a lot of students in their first year of college or university, the first year is when they screw up, because they think, it's my first year, if I get low grades it doesn't matter, I can pull it up later. It's extremely difficult to pull your GPA up if you bomb that first year. It's incredibly hard. It's much harder to raise your GPA than to lower it. So do not use the first year to screw around and mess up your GPA, because you will not recover from that. And start with a strong foundation and go from there. So that's my best advice. All right. His next question: what made you go for the career you're working towards? Well, I'm working towards a pharmacy career. I've already been accepted into this pharmacy school. I'm going there in the fall, and really, I decided on pharmacy not too long ago. I would say about probably last year. I found out about really the profession through a course I was taking here about careers in biology, where every week we would go and we'd have a speaker come in from a different profession and give us a presentation on that job. And up until that point, I really was thinking about going into graduate school, so master's, maybe even PhD program, to do biological research. But after hearing the presentation on pharmacy and digging further into the whole graduate program, how long it was going to take, and what my payout as far as money would be, and job security projected forward, pharmacy beat it out in every single category. It's only 4 years. Master's, granted, is only 2, but PhD would be 4. And to really make the money and to have the most job security in research, you need the PhD. So it's basically 4 years either way. The job security for pharmacy is extremely high right now. Also, pharmacists are in extreme demand right now. They're always looking for pharmacists. The pharmacist at the presentation basically said that he could bring us to any city in the country, drop us off, and we could have a job by the end of the day in any city he dropped us in. So that was obviously very appealing considering the state of our economy. And the pay. I mean, you can make triple-figure salary right out of school. And if not right out of school, then very soon after. And so all those things considered for me, considering the fact that I really do like biology, I'm into medicine as well as the research aspect of it, like biological diversity and such, I went with pharmacy. Now, to be honest with you, if the two were equivalent, meaning if you had pharmacy and biological research were equivalent in years, job security, and money, so everything was the same, I just had to choose which one I wanted to do, I would probably go into the research, the biological diversity research, because I think I find that slightly more interesting. But the reality of it is you have to project things such as job security, pay. People tell you, do what you love, don't worry about the pay. Yeah, that's great to say in the fantasy world, but in the real world we live in, you have to project that money. And I'm not saying do something you hate because of the money, but I don't hate pharmacy. I find it very exciting, very interesting. Maybe just slightly less than the research, but when you weigh the benefits and the pluses and minuses more or less, for me, pharmacy won out. So that is why I'm going to become a pharmacist. All right. This next question: would you consider doing a Final Fantasy X X2 remastered playthrough this summer? You say you don't know much about Final Fantasy, so FFX is a great start. Well, I know so little about Final Fantasy that I don't even know what Final Fantasy X is. I have no idea what it is. I believe that's more or less the recent series of Final Fantasy games, if I'm not mistaken. The one that's been... I could be completely wrong on that. I don't believe that I'm going to be considering to play Final Fantasy. Reason is I'm not very big into the whole Japanese culture thing. I know a lot of people in this community, video game community and all that. Anime is a very big deal. The Japanese culture is a very big deal, and I get that. I'm just not one of those people. You know, I answered the question in the last episode about anime. I'm not really into it. And Final Fantasy is very anime Japanese centric, and it's also turn-based RPG gameplay, Japanese RPG gameplay, which I am not a fan of. I don't really like that style of gameplay. So Final Fantasy, although it's you know, obviously at least the original ones are hailed as tremendous games. They're tremendous games if you enjoy playing that style of game, and you enjoy that culture and that whole that whole thing. I'm not really big into it, so for me, Final Fantasy is not something that's really, you know, high up on my list. I just keep checking my phone because that's where my timer is. So that's that. And next question. Yes, I remember this from when he posted it. Would you rather be poor and live until you're 80, or be rich and live to 40? Now that is a very, very good question, and it's a very difficult one. But as shallow as it may seem, I'm going to have to go with the rich and be 40. Reason being is that if I'm poor, it means, especially in this country, I'm going to struggle like hell every single day to make ends meet, to get food on the table. And it's not so much about luxury at that point, it's about struggling just to feed yourself and your family. And do I really want to live 80 years if every day of my life, those 80 years, I'm going to have to struggle to provide for my family and to provide for myself? You know, working my ass off and getting little to nothing in return. I wouldn't want to live 80 years that way, because for me that's not a fulfilling life. That's not a life that I would want to lead, and I certainly wouldn't want to have a family in that type of situation. I just feel like that situation would lead to a lot of unhappiness, a lot of fighting, a lot of worry, and 80 years of that to me is not worth it. Now 40 years and rich, obviously, to have the ability to provide for my family with no worry, to put a roof over our head, and yeah, have a little extra fun here and there, you know. I could do 40 years of that. And it would be a much easier, simpler life simply because I wouldn't have to worry about eating, feeding my family, and sheltering us. You know what I mean? And so for me, that's what it is. It may sound shallow, but is 80 years of struggling worth the extra 40 years, you know? For me, probably not. So those are all of Tom Harding's questions. Now we're going to move on to We10, who asked 2 questions. Oh, I completely apologize. The Final Fantasy question We10 actually asked. I screwed up. I read his question. So that was one of We10's questions. Let me read the last one from Tom Harding. He asked, I remember you saying you played Borderlands 2 recently. This is true. Which is one of my favorite games. What improvements would you like to see if they make a 3rd game? Well, I talked about that. I talked about the things I didn't really like about Borderlands in my Voodoo's verdict of Borderlands 2. What I would ask them to change is, several things. Number one, to add some variety to the gameplay. And I don't mean variety in quests or characters, but I mean actual gameplay. Based on my Voodoo's thoughts, I talked about going home and the evolution of gaming. You know that my main emphasis is on gameplay. Borderlands gameplay is extremely simplistic and repetitive. All you do is hold down the shoot button. That's what the whole game consists of. I have a PS3 controller right here. The entire game is this. Holding the shoot button and aiming. And it gets really repetitive and boring after 20 hours of doing that gameplay. So if they could have, if they could have a variety in their gameplay, meaning basically have it even deeper of an RPG element. Obviously, yeah, it's kind of RPG now, but if they had it RPG and you could use different abilities, if you could be a mainly melee character, a small guns, a large guns character, something like that. I think it would really add to the complexity of the gameplay. I would ask them to change that. I'd ask them to change their leveling system because it's broken. How they level enemies 5 levels above you to beat Borderlands 2 because you don't want to do their repetitive side content, so they punish you by leveling the enemies way above what you are leveled. I'd ask them to change that. I can't ask them to change their humor and their quirkiness, even though it's not necessarily my favorite. I can't ask them to change that because that's what makes Borderlands Borderlands. Without that, you might as well call the game something else. So I can't ask them to change that. But yeah, I would ask them to add more variety to the gameplay and to fix their leveling system to where it's actually an organic leveling system and you actually feel like you're on the same level with your enemies for the most part. Those would be my main 2 changes. All right. So now we'll go back and answer Wee 10's final question, who says, "Will you be busy this summer?" Funny story. I have actually no idea right now what I'm going to be doing this summer. I really don't. I haven't talked about it with my family. I haven't thought about it. I'm just trying to get through school for the next 2 months till I graduate. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be working. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So, right now, I would say if I'm not going to be forced to work, I probably won't. I will probably like to take this summer to enjoy it and be basically the last summer of being free. You know what I mean? Because summers in between pharmacy school are probably still going to be very busy for me. I'm probably still going to have work to do. I probably will be getting a continuous job when I go to pharmacy school because I'll be moving back to a permanent home, my home, and so I'll probably, if I don't have to, I probably won't work this summer. I will probably just take the summer to enjoy it and work on the channel and that kind of stuff, similar to how I did last summer. Again, I'm trying to get back to Los Angeles this summer to visit Brandon. Like I said, I've talked to my dad previously about taking a road trip out there. I will bring it up again, obviously, as the summer gets closer, but I'd like to get back out there. Will I? I don't know. I certainly hope so, because I want to go back out there and just visit and see Brandon and everything, but we'll have to see. Other than that, I don't know. I'd like to take another trip, with like Tyler and Dave, something like that, like we normally do every summer, so I assume we probably will go somewhere. Other than that, like I said, if I don't have to be too busy, I'm probably not going to be, and, I'll probably just soak in the summer and enjoy it, but obviously, as usual, I will update you guys as we get closer to summer, what plans are going to be. Obviously, actually, probably the best way to do that is when I do my Packing for Home series for the spring, which will be in May, which coincidentally will be my final Packing for Home series ever. I will probably be talking a lot about the summer there, because I will be, basically, that will be like 2 days or whatever before summer starts. I'll probably have a good idea of what's going on that summer. So that's probably the best place to find that out, but yeah. Alright, so now I got 4 questions by JP the Warrior, and then we are done. So his first question is, what is your favorite TV show? Again, I mentioned this before in the past. I don't watch too much TV. The only TV I really watch is sports. But I would have to say my favorite TV show, I actually got into this on Netflix and have seen now all 3 seasons, and I'm anticipating the 4th, is American Horror Story on FX or FXX or I don't know, whatever. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the first season. I thought the second season was the best by far. The third season was alright. I think it was the weakest one, honestly, in my opinion, and because they kind of took a lot of the creepiness out of it. And I thought the third one was overly bloody and gory, to the point that it even made me uncomfortable in some episodes. Like the one where she cuts the guy's toe off with the hedge clippers, then she stabs her own eyes with the knife. I can stomach a lot. Obviously, I play really gruesome games, and normally blood and guts and that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. The third season of American Horror Story bothered me. and made me uncomfortable to the point where I had to close my eyes and not even watch some of the stuff that was going on. So I thought it was a little over the top. It was obviously cool. It was set in New Orleans. Obviously I live 10 minutes from downtown, so that was really cool to see it in New Orleans. And I think the fourth season they said they might even be filming in Louisiana as well, which is cool. But I really hope in the fourth season that they kind of tone down the blood and guts and the stuff like that, and focus more on the creepiness, kind of psychological horror that they did in the first two seasons. Because I thought the third lost some of that and kind of turned into like a soap opera. But yeah, that's probably my favorite TV series because I don't really watch TV. All right, next question. Do you watch the WWE? It's the strangest thing. It seems like so many people in this community, this YouTube community, are also big WWE fans, and it's crazy to me because I don't know, like, I don't meet or know anybody, here around locally or whatever that really is. I mean, my friend Dave used to be, but god damn it, the computer went off. But I don't know, it's the craziest thing. Like DSP, I know obviously is very into WWE, and Mr. Ludacris watches WWE, and I would think you would watch it too if you asked me this question. I don't watch it. I've never had any interest in the WWE. I always thought it was just, don't take this the wrong way, but I always thought it was silly. I thought it was over the top and just like some of the worst, absolutely worst acting and plots and stuff I've ever seen in my life. And normally, when I had seen episodes of it, I usually just was laughing the whole time because I don't know. And then it's just kind of gross. Like, you have these massively overweight, like, steroid guys who are all sweaty and they're wearing Speedos and they have like long hair and they're flinging sweat everywhere. I don't know. I never had any interest in the WWE, but it's crazy. There's a lot of people who do, obviously. And WrestleMania is coming to New Orleans next year, I know, and it's probably going to bring in a boatload of money because WWE still has a really big following, apparently. So, I don't watch it, but clearly it has a following. So, all right. Last two questions. When do you see Voodoo's Brew returning? That's a good question. I don't have an answer for you right now. Brandon and I have not discussed Voodoo's Brew in a long time. We were discussing. I had mentioned we might do a 2013 year in review recap Voodoo's Brew. We never did get around to doing that. I don't know the answer for you, and this might sound crazy, but our next episode of Voodoo's Brew may not be until we recap E3 this year. I mean, I would say every year that's the one Voodoo's Brew is happening. We're going to do a Voodoo's Brew where we recap E3. We've done it the past 2 years. We're going to do it again this year. Other than that, I can't tell you. I mean, it's not... Our hanging out and stuff and everything is not the way it used to be. We don't both have channels like we used to have. Mainly, that was the bulk of our Voodoo's Brews was us talking about our channels and what games we were playing, because we were normally playing the same games at the same times because we were recording. But now that we're not doing that, I don't know. It's just something that, I mean, we could do it if we focused heavily on it and came together and talked came up with topics that we want to discuss and all that. We could do it, but that passion for doing it hasn't really been there. We had that hiatus and we tried to bring the series back, and it did so poorly compared to how it was doing before we took a break that we got discouraged by it. The Voodoo Brew was so popular. It did so well before we took that extended break, and when we came back and did a couple episodes, and the results were so poor, we just kind of got discouraged by that, and I don't think we've, really come around yet to, to bringing it back. I mean, honestly, this question is the only interest we've gotten in the series in a very long time, and so when people aren't asking for something and the reviews are bad, you kind of lose that desire to do it. But like I said, we're absolutely going to do it for E3 again this year. I don't see why we wouldn't. But other than that, I don't really have an answer for you on Voodoo's Brew. It's kind of in limbo right now, until E3. So that's my best answer. And finally, the last question. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left here. Perfect timing. Do you think Ben Affleck will make a good Batman? To be honest with you, I don't really know what kind of an actor Ben Affleck is. Again, like I said, I'm not a big TV show and movie guy, so I'm not this guy that knows of all kinds of different actors and seen them in all these movies and know how they act. From what I'm hearing from pretty much everybody I've talked to, the answer is no. I don't think he'll make a good Batman, or they don't think he'll make a good Batman. I don't know because I'm not that familiar with Ben Affleck's work. What I can tell you is that it's an absolute crying shame that we are already making a new Batman this soon after The Dark Knight's over. Because I don't think that they could bring anybody in right now who people are going to look at as an exemplary Batman, because the Dark Knight trilogy was so good, everybody in everybody's mind, it's Christian Bale. So, and Christian Bale's a fantastic actor, so when you... Anybody that would have brought in at this point, I think, would have paled in comparison, because the Dark Knight trilogy is still fresh in our minds. It's not that old, and the fact that that they're just rebooting Batman for the sake of it, just so they can have a new Batman for the Justice League, because Christian Bale wouldn't do it. I think the Justice League movie is going to be a massive fail anyway, because I don't know. I mean, they're still gonna have to do like an Aquaman, which everybody thinks sucks, and they're gonna have to do other movies for like Wonder Woman. It's gonna take 100 years for Justice League to come out, and then when it does, I don't think anyone's gonna care. So, I mean, the Justice League might be really awesome if they get like Christopher Nolan to help write it. Obviously, he helped write The Dark Knight. He had a hand, obviously, in Man of Steel, which I really enjoyed. So maybe they could get him on board to do the Justice League. I don't know if he would, because it's a different Batman, and he's associated with the Dark Knight. I don't know. But yeah, whether Ben Affleck will or he won't, from what I'm hearing from people who are familiar with his work, he won't make a good Batman. Like I said, I don't know enough about him to make that judgment call, but I would probably be disappointed with whoever they choose at this point, because I still view Christian Bale as Batman, and, I thought that he was fantastic. And it's either Christian Bale or like Michael Keaton, and so to bring in another person to do Batman at this point, this quickly, is just a big mistake in my opinion. But, it is what it is. If the movie, whenever it comes out, I assume I'll see it and can make a judgment call at that point, but I don't have these huge expectations for a Ben Affleck Batman movie, so that is what it is. But, alright guys, so that is it, and with that, I'm going to officially disable the comments on this video to let everyone know that I've done the question and answer video, Voodoo's Mailbag now, episode 2. And, yeah, that's it. So very soon, within the next couple days, I'll be posting another video up where you can comment on the video asking me questions for Voodoo's Mailbag episode 3. So anybody out there who has any questions at all, you've now had two videos to kind of see the questions that other people are asking, and I haven't received one question yet that I've refused to answer, because they've all been obviously very appropriate, and I've had no problem answering any of them. I've really enjoyed answering them, and hopefully you've enjoyed finding out a little bit more about me. And something I've always tried to do on my channel is to let you guys know and get to know me, the guy behind the channel. I think I've done that pretty well over the past 3+ years, and this is just another way for me to do that and to have direct access and communication with you guys. It's really cool. I enjoy doing it. So hopefully, when I post the next video, we'll get some more comments. And again, not that I have anything against these 3 guys. I really appreciate them because they're extremely active on my channel. But it would be cool to get a really diverse group of people asking me questions, kind of like I did for episode 1. So yeah, any questions at all out there, be sure to leave them on the video that I'm going to be posting soon, called Ask Questions for Voodoo's Mailbag Episode 3. And once again, as I've done the past 2 times, when I get enough questions piled up, I will record the video. So this has been Voodoo's Mailbag Episode 2. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope I've answered your questions to your liking. I am Voodoo, and until next time, peace out and have a good one.